This is Lorena from Synergy Behavior Solutions. I work with dogs and all manner of animals whenever I can, working with behavior modification and basic training, etc., etc. So, I want to talk today about a topic that I think a lot of people tend to struggle with, and that is how to create a dog that is calm and relaxed in the yard, a dog that is capable of recalling and maybe not alert barking in the yard, and a dog that is not fence running. So I have a very much work in progress dog with these specific problems, and I recently moved into a new house with a, hi Anita, thanks for joining us, with a next door neighbor that has a German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd is also a little bit reactive, kind of like my dog, and so it presents a really unique and great training opportunity. So I'm not necessarily upset about this development. I love my new house, I love my new yard, and I love the opportunity to work, to work with Yoshi, who now is excited about being involved in the live, on this specific issue. Hi, you ready? Sit. Thanks. So, first thing I'm going to do is walk you through my setup here. Yoshi is ready to train and show you what's up. And the first thing that I want to do is show you how I have things set up in my house. So, okay, come on. So as you can see, I'm going to do a little camera flippage. So as you can see, I do have a gate that separates my house. I have a gated community right now for some interdog struggles with my other dog, whose recall is excellent and he's pretty chilled out in the yard, but Yoshi still struggles there. So we want to work on her calm and also give her a space where she can chill by herself. So that is what's happening with our gated community. So as I bring Yoshi to the yard, you will see that I have a raised bed set up. Hi, she's like ready to train. I have a raised bed set up right here in front of the door. And it's a really easy way for Yoshi to communicate that she needs to go out. I really ask my dog for some calmness right off the bat, as right before we head outside. So in my old house, I had this thing that would happen. That was, I see squirrels out there right now, so that's a really great opportunity to show you what happens when a squirrel enters our yard. Nice, good girl. And in my old house, both of my dogs would explode out the back door with all of the intensity of a typhoon or hurricane, and they would even scratch up the floor. There was so much high arousal going through that threshold. So I view thresholds when it comes to dog training as a concept, and the threshold of exiting the house to the backyard is a really big deal for the average dog. Backyards tend to be pretty high arousal spaces, especially for dogs like Yoshi that have a pretty high prey drive and tend to practice a lot of high arousal behaviors out there. And so the first thing that we want to do is set up what kind of energy, what kind of tone do we actually want to see in our dogs as they exit our house. Whatever level they exit at, that's the level they're going to be while they're outside. So for Yoshi, I really wanted to have the yard be a place of calm, unless I am actively working with her and she's engaging directly with me. So what that means for her right now is that I have her settled on her boundary, which she just offered that behavior because we do a lot of mat training work, etc. And she knows that being nice and calm, just like this, is what will get her outside. So one thing to think about is that I want my dog to acknowledge my existence as she leaves the house. And so what I'm going to do as soon as she leaves the house is I am going to mark. Her marker word is nice. I'm going to mark, and then I am going to feed her and encourage disengagement from the environment the moment she steps across that threshold. So I'm opening the door. Notice that she is still on her boundary, and I'm going to calmly give her a nice release to go outside. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to go outside with her. Flip this around. Nice. Gonna mark and reward the moment she goes outside. Unfortunately for all of us, it is raining, and if you've ever met a pit bull, you know that this is not a time that they want to be nice. There we go. So she saw the squirrel. So what I'm going to do is bring her back. Yoshi, come. Yes, good girl. And I'm going to reward a whole bunch of times in the opposite direction of the exciting thing. And it's quite possible if you have a dog that has pretty strong prey drive and has experienced a lot of things like cat chasing, squirrel chasing, fence running in your backyard, you will find that your recall might not work as well. And I will say that Yoshi's recall a month ago when we first moved into this space was not that good, and I'm going to talk about how I built that recall, even with the squirrel still being present. It is now safely up the tree, but she knows exactly where it is. So part of what I've done here is when I recalled her and then rewarded her for her recall, my goal was to build lots and lots of value in the opposite direction and in her disengagement from that squirrel. We have practiced numerous times a day her recalling from, I'm gonna flip this again, from this exact spot, because this is not only where the neighbor dog lives, it's right across the other side of that fence, but it's also this giant tree where all the squirrels hang out, as well as the squirrel highway. Our fence here is a squirrel highway. They run all the way along this fence and then all the way into the bushes here. So Yoshi now has already figured out that pattern, and she's extremely interested in making that the focus of her yard adventures, and I do not want that to be the case. So we come out here and we play a really simple game, and that game is, can you disengage from the really exciting hotspot? And that hotspot for Yoshi is definitely this spot under this tree. So I'm going to toss a treat, get it toward the tree, and when she disengages and turns back, nice, I'm going to mark, and then I'm going to feed a bunch of times in the opposite direction. This is also how I work with her on leash, and when we see other dogs. She's also pretty dog reactive. Anita asks, what do you do if the dog won't leave the fence and just barks? I will definitely talk about that in just a moment when I talk about recall. Thank you for that question. It's really important because most people are going to have that problem. Because if most people can recall their dogs off a squirrel, they would not be concerned so much about the prey drive. So, how do we get a dog that is able to recall from exciting things, especially in the yard where they start to anticipate where these exciting things happen, is that we have to think about a history of reinforcement. So if you are not working on recall and engagement with you and disengagement from the environment outside of those contexts, you are not going to be successful. So Yoshi all day long, this dog is working on disengaging from the environment and disengaging from exciting or stressful things and re-engaging with me. We cannot expect our dogs to recall off of a squirrel or off of another dog if they can't even recall off their favorite toy, or they can't recall off of the other dog, or they can't recall off of an empty jar. And yes, I have worked with dogs who cannot disengage from an empty jar, and their owners maybe are expecting too much out of them outside of that context. So when I play this game, where, I'm gonna flip this around again. Come on, phone, do your thing. There. When I play this game, where I toss a treat toward the exciting place, nice, and then mark and reward in the opposite direction numerous times, I am creating a dog that has huge value and turning away from the environment and back to me. And I am very carefully not creating a ping pong effect where Yoshi gets one treat and runs back to the fence and then gets another treat and runs back to the fence. I don't want to create that kind of high arousal disengagement. I want a dog that can flip away from anything really exciting and focus on me in a sustained way. And she's a dog that definitely fixates and struggles with those kinds of things. So I want to talk a little bit about how I build that kind of recall with my dogs. And that is a whole class for sure. And I've done a webinar on recall. Please check our Vimeo stream. We're going to start posting all of our webinars available for streaming, and you'll be able to see things like a recall webinar, our Calm Canine webinar. I also teach classes that are 4 to 6 weeks on these topics. But in just a nutshell, what I have done very intentionally in my new space here, and you can do it in a space that's not new also, is to manage the environment so that initially it was very difficult for Yoshi to practice the behaviors I did not want her to practice. So for the first probably 2 weeks that I really wanted to work on this specific issue, I went ahead and had Yoshi on leash when we came outside. If she wasn't on leash, she was on a long line, and I was directly outside with her, and I have high-value treats in my treat pouch, and I did tons of games in the house and in the yard, and Yoshi's time in the yard was structured. So she would come out, she would go potty, she was either directly training with me and we were working on calmness. Notice that out here, I also have another raised bed that I work with her on. She often will go from raised bed to raised bed so that she is immediately settled when she gets outside. And I am also working on our Look at That game, which is a technique to work with reactive dogs. And I'm constantly teaching Yoshi that novelty and change in the environment is a cue to reorient to me. And that is the foundation of having control over your dog and your dog actually having control over themselves. And so for Yoshi, it is really, really reinforcing to her, and by no accident, that she chooses this behavior of engaging with me over most environmental distractions. And she's not a dog that I think will ever not have a prey drive. She's probably not a dog that will ever not stiffen up and get excited when she sees a squirrel, but do I have enough engagement and control and skills in my dog that she can disengage from that situation? And I would say yes, she does, and she can, and I can demonstrate that. And so when I'm working in that management zone, I want to make sure my dog is not rehearsing the high arousal behaviors that I struggle with. Your dog will go to wherever they have received reinforcement in the past. And by that I mean whatever your dog chooses to spend their time doing and whatever they have access to, that is how you are going to determine what they will choose in a high arousal and high stress situation. So if your dog is the kind of dog that spends all day playing with their siblings, if your dog goes to the dog park and that's their only form of interaction and exercise is playing with other dogs, if your dog spends time in the yard endlessly fence running and chasing squirrels, that is where they will continue to go to receive that reinforcement. So if you want to change that, you need to manage their environment to prevent access to those things and instead build huge value in engaging with you. So that said, the way that I have built really beautiful recall in just a few weeks that I've been in this house is through preparation and through figuring out what it is that my dogs really, really love, and then making sure that access to that builds a really strong history of getting that reinforcement every single time. So those squirrels are still out there, and Yoshi chose to follow me back inside and get right back onto her boundary. And that's what I want because I have rehearsed it with her so many times and she has value in it. I will say that this dog right here is not a foodie dog. This is not a dog that the average person would say is food motivated, but through games and through positive reinforcement training, I built a dog that chooses to engage with me over the environment. She will work for kibble when she is not hungry, and not because she necessarily wants the kibble, but because she wants the engagement. So that said, what I have here is a jar of nasty, smelly dog treats, and every single time my dogs recall from the yard, they get one. And when I'm working on recall, I am very careful to recall my dogs periodically throughout the day and then send them right back out into the yard. Now, my dogs don't have unlimited access to the yard because I do not want them to be practicing behaviors I am not there to supervise, especially Yoshi. But I also know that now she can go outside and lay in the sun, and I can recall her while I'm cooking or whatever. She will come eat the treat, and then I will give her a release to go back into the yard. So I am making recall hugely valuable to her. I am making sure that recall is not ending her fun, it's not punishing to her. And I'm making sure that she knows that every single time I recall her, good things happen. And so I might recall her to her favorite toy when we're playing outside, but when I'm standing right here, I'm gonna flip this around. When I'm standing right here at this door, this is one of the most common times that my clients and the people I work with say that their dogs don't recall. And that is because this spot, this transition, often means the end of fun. They come inside, the door closes, and that's that. And so if we instead teach them that when I am recalling here, that's when the best treats happen. That's when she comes in, can get on her bed and get a handful of hot dogs or her favorite chew and go and settle. That's the kind of history of reinforcement and the kind of predictability we need to build in our dogs. Now, if I recall her and she does not come, and yeah, it totally happens. Dog trainers do not have perfect dogs, and Yoshi is far from perfect. So if she is actively chasing a squirrel, let's say, I would say at this point she recalls off of the neighbor dog really, really well. I'm quite proud of that. But if she does not come, I do not repeat the cue, and I do not let her, I don't even want to say that, I don't want to say it like that. I do not repeat the cue, and I do not just walk away. So I don't just give up. It is clear that she's struggling and needs help. Dogs are not trying to get away with things, and dogs are not trying to pull one over on you or rule the world or choosing not to listen. If your dog is unable to disengage from that other dog or that squirrel, it is because they're having a hard time, and we need to go help them. So in that situation, Yoshi now has bounced on her other boundary and is ready to work. And so in that situation, I will make it even easier for my dog to disengage by walking over to the spot, and I'm going to show, it is the spot for sure. If she is struggling to recall the first time, it's probably because she's over here or in that corner with the squirrel. And I'm going to get closer, and I am going to walk in front of my dog, put a handful of really tasty treats in front of her mouth, and bring her over here, and then reward her ability to disengage with some help. And so I would say that while I'm in this process, I am trying to actively reinforce the physical behavior of turning away, even if that means that I am treat in front of the nose, bringing her with me and encouraging her to go in a particular direction. This also, I haven't had to do this with Yoshi, and I'm actually quite impressed that I haven't. But if your dog is completely brain fallen out, having a really, really hard time, and isn't even accepting the handful of hot dogs in front of their face, I would say that whatever that trigger is, I do not want my dog to engage with that trigger again. So that's a pretty severe level of being over threshold, and we need to acknowledge how did that happen and what exactly was the trigger, what's going on with the dog emotionally in that space. But also I would say, having a safe and effective way to physically move your dog from a situation. And notice Yoshi does not like me grabbing her collar, and that's because I don't often do that. I usually will either have a leash or a harness attached to her so that I can easily grab the harness and bring her gently away from a situation. And I think that it's often in those situations, and this is just like heart-to-heart, real dog owner trainer situation, when we recall our dogs and they don't come and they're barking and lunging and being really challenging behaviorally, those are the times when we tend to resort to raising our voices, using physical contact that is aversive and unpleasant, and feeling frustrated, embarrassed, like hopeless in those moments, and feeling like all the work that we're doing for our dogs is for naught. And I will say that's 100% not true. You're doing great and you're doing the best you can. And I also will say that those are actually the times when we need to invest as much as we can in the relationship with our dogs and understand that they've been put in a situation they can't handle. So let's get them out of that situation gently and lovingly, give them some downtime, and then assess what is it that happened that created that particular situation, and how can I prevent it in the future? Something that my neighbors did that I absolutely love is when they realized that we moved in and had dogs, is they actually built another little fence on the other side of the fence to manage their dog's behavior, so it wasn't so easy for him to come right up to the fence. That is good dog management. That is good dog training. And that is how we're able to keep our dogs within a mindset in which they can learn. So, just want to plug a few things. Speaking of being able to give your dogs cues when they're in high arousal, I have a nice. Come on, let's go. I have a Premack webinar that the second part is this Sunday. The first part was this past weekend, but you are more than welcome to join us for the second part. The Premack principle is a really fantastic way to build great control and thinking and arousal skills in your dog. And we also have a loose leash walking seminar coming up. I teach a reactive rover online class right now. We'll probably offer that at some point again. So if you have a lunging, barking dog similar to mine, please take our 4-week class. And we are going to be streaming all of our webinars on Vimeo pretty soon so that you can access any of the ones related to capturing calmness in our somewhat wild dogs, reactive, hi Sarah, hi Zoe, thanks for joining us, in our reactive dogs, etc., etc. So please check out our website and follow us on Facebook. We address all of these particular concerns as much as we can, and we know how it can be difficult to live with a reactive dog or a challenging dog, and we want to help you. So please give us a like, give us a follow. My name is Lorena, and I work for Synergy Behavior Solutions, and thanks for joining us today. Have a good one.